Hey everyone, welcome back to Planetterrian Daily. I'm Patrick in Vancouver, and this is episode 44. It's April 11th, 2026, and as always, we're digging into the latest peer-reviewed research that's reshaping how we understand our planet, our technologies, and ourselves. No hype, just the science as it stands today. We'll start with something that's becoming impossible to ignore: the way marine heat waves are now measurably supercharging the destructive power of hurricanes and tropical cyclones. A major new study has quantified what many climate scientists have suspected for years. These prolonged spikes in ocean temperature aren't just background noise. They're actively injecting extra energy and moisture into storm systems all over the world. The extra heat provides more fuel for evaporation, which translates into heavier rainfall once those storms make landfall. At the same time, the altered thermodynamics can slow a cyclone's forward speed, meaning it can sit over one region for far longer than historical patterns would suggest. That combination, more rain, slower movement, is dramatically raising flood risks even in storms whose peak wind speeds might look only modestly stronger on paper. For coastal communities already wrestling with sea level rise, this is a compounding problem. What used to be a once-in-a-century rainfall event could become far more routine. Insurance models that still rely heavily on historical wind speed records are going to need serious revision. The same goes for building codes, drainage infrastructure, and emergency response planning. My take is straightforward. This research is a clear signal that we can't keep treating ocean warming and atmospheric extremes as separate issues. They're now tightly coupled, and the coupling is getting tighter. One of the more interesting angles the study highlights is how these marine heat waves push tropical cyclones into behavior that falls outside the envelope of what we've seen in the instrumental record. We've spent decades building risk models on past data, but the ocean baseline itself is shifting. A patch of water that's 3 or 4 degrees above the long-term average for weeks on end simply contains more potential energy. When a developing storm pulls that energy upward, the whole system gains strength in ways that wind speed categories alone don't fully capture. The researchers point out that rainfall rates can increase substantially, sometimes by tens of %, while the storm's translation speed drops. That's the recipe for catastrophic inland flooding, the kind we saw in places like Houston with Harvey or parts of the Carolinas with Florence, but now on a more regular basis. The practical takeaway the paper offers feels particularly useful. When seasonal outlooks or short-term forecasts start highlighting unusually warm ocean patches, those storm warnings deserve extra weight. It's not alarmism, it's updated risk calibration. I suspect we'll start seeing marine heat wave days referenced alongside Saffir-Simpson categories in future briefings. Paying attention to both will give emergency managers and residents a clearer picture of what's actually coming. While nature seems to be amplifying some of our biggest threats, technology is quietly helping us reduce bias in one of the most human decisions we make every day: hiring. A thoughtful new study looked at how inclusion-focused artificial intelligence tools perform when HR professionals are screening candidates with disabilities. The results are encouraging. When these systems are deliberately designed with accessibility and equity in mind, they measurably reduce discriminatory outcomes compared with traditional resume-based or human-only processes. The AI doesn't replace human judgment. Instead, it shifts the early stages of recruitment toward more objective evaluation of skills, experience, and potential. It can flag relevant accomplishments that might otherwise be overlooked because of how a resume is formatted or because certain educational or career paths look different for people with disabilities. What stands out to me is that this isn't generic "AI will fix everything" optimism. The study emphasizes that the tools only work when they're built correctly, trained on diverse data, regularly audited for bias, and deployed as a complement to human oversight rather than a replacement for it. Organizations that adopt them thoughtfully may finally start dismantling some of the long-standing structural barriers that have kept talented people out of workplaces. It's a reminder that technology doesn't have an inherent moral arc. It reflects the values of the people who design and govern it. Get the design right, and AI can become a genuine force for fairness at scale. That theme of AI solving practical, real-world problems continues in agriculture, where researchers from the University of Barcelona and Agrotecnio have developed a clever system that combines drone imagery with machine learning to rapidly identify wheat varieties that hold their yield under climate stress. Traditional plant breeding is meticulous, slow, and expensive, often taking a decade or more to bring a new variety from initial cross to commercial release. This new approach dramatically compresses that timeline. Drones fly over test plots, capturing high-resolution multispectral images that reveal subtle differences in how different wheat lines respond to heat, drought, and other stressors. The AI then crunches those thousands of data points to pinpoint the genetic lines that maintain productivity, even when conditions turn harsh. Importantly, the method doesn't force breeders to trade off yield for resilience. Some of the standout varieties perform well under both normal and stressed conditions. That's a big deal. With climate models projecting more frequent and intense extremes in major growing regions, food security increasingly depends on crops that can roll with the punches rather than collapse. This technology offers a genuinely scalable route toward climate-resilient agriculture. I'm struck by how it brings together remote sensing, genomics, and computational power in a way that feels like the future of crop improvement. Faster, more precise, and less reliant on luck. Farmers and breeders could soon have access to varieties that keep yields steady even as temperatures rise and rainfall patterns shift. That's not a silver bullet, but it's a powerful tool in the adaptation toolbox. From crops above ground to dangers hidden below it, another elegant combination of drones and artificial intelligence is transforming humanitarian work in some of the world's most difficult places. A researcher at Binghamton University is developing drone-mounted geophysical sensors paired with smart algorithms to detect landmines far more quickly and safely than traditional manual methods. Clearing minefields has always been one of the slowest, most dangerous, and most expensive legacies of conflict. Demining teams walk step by step, often in heavy protective gear, relying on metal detectors and probes in terrain that can be overgrown, unstable, or booby-trapped. The new system uses drones to carry magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar, then feeds that data into AI models trained to distinguish actual mines from harmless debris with impressive accuracy. The result is a much faster initial survey that lets human teams focus their limited time and risk on confirmed threats. Beyond the obvious safety benefits for deminers, faster clearance means communities can reclaim farmland, rebuild roads, and return to normal life years earlier than they otherwise would. The project feels like a genuine step forward in turning advanced technology toward one of humanity's more painful, lingering problems. It's also a nice example of how the same basic toolkit, drones plus AI, can be adapted across completely different domains, from feeding the world to making it safer. While we're using technology to clear old dangers, a very different kind of breakthrough is deepening our understanding of the sophisticated chemical warfare plants have been waging for millions of years. Scientists have finally clarified the last unknown enzymatic reactions in the production of nicotine in wild tobacco plants. This solves a long-standing puzzle in plant alkaloid chemistry and gives us a much more complete picture of how members of the nightshade family defend themselves against insects, herbivores, and pathogens. Nicotine isn't just a human stimulant. In the plant world, it's a potent neurotoxin carefully synthesized through a multi-step pathway that researchers had pieced together only incompletely until now. The newly identified enzymes fill in the final gaps, showing exactly how the plant assembles this complex molecule with such precision. Beyond basic science, the discovery could eventually open new routes for developing therapeutic nicotine derivatives or engineering plants with altered chemical defenses for agriculture. I love these stories because they remind us how much elegant biochemistry is happening all around us that we're only beginning to read. What looked like a finished textbook chapter on alkaloid biosynthesis suddenly has new pages. The work adds a fundamental piece to our knowledge of plant biochemistry that had remained incomplete for decades. Applications in medicine or crop protection may still be further down the road, but the foundation is now solid. From biological chemistry, we move to fundamental physics, where a question that's lingered for 4 decades has finally received convincing experimental confirmation. The Kardar-Parisi-Zhang equation, a theoretical model describing how surfaces grow and roughen over time, has now been verified in real 2-dimensional systems ranging from growing crystals to bacterial colonies. For years, the KPZ equation was a beautiful piece of mathematics that matched certain simulations in 1-dimensional experiments, but many physicists wondered whether it truly captured the messy reality of 2-dimensional growth in living and non-living systems alike. The new experiments close that chapter. By carefully controlling conditions and measuring surface fluctuations at high resolution, researchers showed that the equation's predictions hold up across scales and materials. This cements its status as a fundamental framework, strengthening its relevance not just in theoretical physics but in biology, material science, and even engineering. The validation gives scientists greater confidence to apply the KPZ framework to phenomena as diverse as tumor growth, thin film manufacturing, and the spread of bacterial biofilms. It's satisfying to see a long-standing theoretical prediction finally meet rigorous experimental reality. That kind of closure is rare and valuable. It lets the field move forward from "does this work" to "how can we use this?" Staying with unintended consequences of human infrastructure, new research identifies expanding highways as an underappreciated driver of the urban heat island effect in American cities. We've known for a long time that concrete, asphalt, and reduced vegetation make cities hotter than surrounding countryside, but this study zooms in on road widening as a specific, quantifiable contributor. Wider highways mean more dark pavement that absorbs and re-radiates solar energy, less space for trees and green infrastructure, and often more traffic that adds its own heat. The researchers carefully disentangle these mechanisms and, crucially, outline practical mitigation steps that planners could adopt: cooler pavement materials, strategic tree planting along rights-of-way, and better integration of green corridors. For cities already struggling with extreme heat, these findings provide actionable evidence that road widening projects should no longer be evaluated only on traffic flow grounds. Their full climate and health impacts deserve scrutiny too. It's another example of how decisions that seem purely local or sectoral end up shaping the broader climate reality we all live in. The paper strikes a constructive tone. The extra warming is real, but it's also fixable with smarter design choices we already have in hand. From environmental pressures to pharmaceutical progress, we have mixed but informative results from Sanofi's latest clinical trials. Their bispecific nanobody, lunsekimig, which targets both TSLP and IL-13, met its primary endpoint in Phase 2 studies for reducing asthma exacerbations and treating nasal polyps. That's genuinely good news and adds to the growing body of evidence that the TSLP pathway is a promising target in respiratory disease. However, the same molecule failed to meet its primary target in atopic dermatitis, showing once again how a single biologic can shine in one condition while falling short in another. Sanofi is now advancing the drug into Phase 3 testing for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. These outcomes illustrate the normal, if sometimes frustrating, reality of drug development. Progress is rarely linear across every indication. The respiratory successes are encouraging and suggest that carefully designed biologics can make a real difference for patients with difficult-to-treat airway diseases. At the same time, the atopic dermatitis miss is a reminder that biology is complicated and one size rarely fits all. It's a sober but realistic snapshot of how new therapies actually move through the pipeline. A new survey of more than 3,500 American political elites quantifies something many of us already sensed. The partisan gap on climate science remains stark at the highest levels of decision-making. Near unanimous acceptance of human-caused global warming among Democrats stands in contrast to fewer than half of Republicans affirming the same scientific consensus. That divide at the elite level matters because it complicates coordinated policy responses to the very risks we've been discussing today: stronger storms, hotter cities, shifting agricultural zones. Bridging this gap, or at least finding narrow areas of practical agreement, remains one of the quieter but most significant barriers to effective adaptation and mitigation. The data are sobering, yet they also make clear where the conversation needs to focus. Interestingly, the same warming we've been talking about is producing complex changes in how hurricanes behave in the Caribbean and North Atlantic. Satellite data analyzed by researchers at Newcastle University show that rising ocean temperatures are causing tropical cyclones to move more slowly over certain regions. Slower forward speed means longer exposure to heavy rain for the communities below. This adds nuance to our understanding of climate change and extreme weather. It's not always about stronger winds. Sometimes the greatest incremental danger comes from duration and rainfall totals. Coastal preparedness plans may need to put less exclusive focus on wind categories and more on the extended flood threat. It's a good example of how climate impacts can be subtle in their mechanism, yet profound in their consequences. Finally, a counterintuitive finding from optics that I find genuinely delightful. Physicists at Monash University have shown that deliberately introducing optimized disorder into certain thin optical devices can dramatically improve their efficiency and functionality. The work challenges the long-held assumption that perfect order is always best in photonics. By carefully tuning what looks like chaos, they achieved better light confinement and performance in smaller packages. This controlled chaos approach could lead to smaller, more powerful sensors, displays, and communication devices in the years ahead. It's a nice reminder that sometimes the most effective solutions come from embracing complexity rather than trying to eliminate it entirely. Before we wrap up, let's circle back to those marine heat waves for a moment, because I think most of us still picture hurricanes as purely atmospheric monsters whipped up by winds and pressure systems high in the sky. In reality, the ocean is the engine, and those heat waves are now pouring far more fuel into that engine than we saw even a decade ago. As sea surface temperatures climb well above the long-term average and stay there, the extra stored heat and humidity get transferred directly into the storm's circulation. That single, well-documented marine heat wave can add enough latent heat to increase rainfall rates substantially and slow the storm's forward speed, turning what might have been a fast-moving inconvenience into a multi-day deluge. So when forecasts mention unusually warm ocean patches, treat the storm warning as more serious than the same wind speed numbers would have justified in cooler water. Future science communication will likely start quoting marine heatwave metrics alongside traditional categories. Paying attention to both will give us all a clearer picture of real-world risk. That brings us to our Spotlight segment. The marine heatwave research documents a clear mechanistic link between these oceanic events and amplified storm impacts. The extra energy and moisture intensify wind damage, slow storm movement, and dramatically increase rainfall. Coastal planning, insurance models, infrastructure standards, and emergency protocols all need updating to account for these compound effects. Communities already dealing with rising seas now face storms that exceed what historical records alone would predict. Flood risks are rising even when peak winds may not show the same increase. This deeper understanding should encourage more proactive adaptation measures rather than waiting to react after disasters occur. That's Planetterrian Daily for today. If you found today's stories valuable, a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify really does help new listeners discover the show. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for spending part of your day with me, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This podcast is curated by Patrick, but generated using AI voice synthesis of my voice using ElevenLabs. The primary reason to do this is I unfortunately don't have the time to be consistent with generating all the content and wanted to focus on creating consistent and regular episodes for all the themes that I enjoy, and I hope others do as well.